welcome to another episode of Presence Practice with Poonam and Parker. And today's topic is Karmic Law is compensatory. And Poonam's going to guide us through the definition of a karmic law and how it's compensatory. So Poonam, what exactly is karmic law?
I think it is very akin to what they say in the Golden Rule: do unto others as it would be done unto you, right? So that kind of says that we are creating, and Eckhart has this way of saying your future moment is created from how you, the inner state, our consciousness of this present moment. And he's done a beautiful video on it. So I want to play the video so that we can go through the video and then we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail. Here we go. Thank you.
Even if you don't, it won't make any difference. So say yes to the present moment. This is the dictum I often repeat. Say yes to the present moment, no matter what form it takes. And it may take the form of an unconscious human being right there in front of you. So you recognize what has happened. You don't confuse this entity that temporarily has taken over your beautiful partner. You don't confuse that with who your beautiful partner, beautiful outside or inside or both, certainly beautiful inside if you get to their real being. You don't confuse who that real being is. So you recognize what has happened, and that makes it easier for you not to be in a state of reactivity to that unconscious, the unconsciousness and the entity, and thereby you don't strengthen it. And so what else you do then, whether a few words you speak, a few words come out of your mouth, if you stay present, there may be something you say, still hoping to somehow reach the person that's asleep behind the unconsciousness. And even if you say, I love you, whether or not the person that's asleep gets awakened by that, or whether the only thing that hears I love you is the unhappy entity which does not love you, and then shouts something back at you, you'll have to see. In some cases, if the attack or that which has taken over that human being is a very violent one, then there will be a continuous attempt of the unconscious, your unconscious partner, the unconsciousness in your partner will attempt to get reaction from you because it needs it to feed on. So it will do anything. In some cases it may start throwing things at you. Just give me a reaction. And you have to be careful not to get hit. And in extremely unconscious cases, when, of course, it comes to actual physical violence, that's not uncommon. And if it's not physical violence, it's emotional violence. And all these are designed to increase the energy field of the drama there, because it loves the drama. Give me more. And as you know, it's so cunning, it knows exactly where your weak spots are. It'll remind you of something you did 10 years ago, and that's your weak spot, and it'll push that button until finally you blow up. Oh, it's got you now. And then you are participating in the drama, and it's all working as it should according to the unconsciousness. But perhaps it doesn't come that far. It doesn't. Perhaps before that happens, you are able to non-react, not by suppressing a reaction, but simply through your sheer presence. And then whatever comes at you kind of passes through you. If you don't oppose it, it passes the words, and if anything is being thrown at you, then of course that probably won't pass through you. You have to duck. Because you are not yet at the stage of dematerialization. And that it's a huge challenge. It's human unconsciousness. It's the same unconsciousness in a more extreme form that you hear about and in the news every night. There you have the most extreme forms, and usually the collective expressions of that very same unconsciousness in an even much more pronounced form than the occasional unconscious episodes of your life partner. But it's helpful to see that the mechanism behind human unconsciousness and violence is basically the same. So you can look at the world wars, you can look at all the terrorism and all the other mad wars that are being fought as it's just a question of degrees of unconsciousness, not different. So when you go into that state of unconsciousness, it takes you over, you lose it. Basically, then, that is the same energy field that has created what we see as the madness of human history, and what we see of the madness of the so-called world news. The same energy. So don't complain about all these violent people who are doing all these dreadful things. All that it is human unconsciousness in a more pronounced form than yours or your partner's. And so that helps a little bit to find perhaps almost some compassion towards all these crazy people that are doing such crazy things and creating such terrible suffering. Now, if you become compassionate towards them, don't worry. It doesn't mean that they will not experience the consequences of their unconsciousness. That still happens. By being compassionate to another human being, you don't necessarily remove the karmic consequences of their action. But you yourself become free from being drawn into the karmic cycle. So the act of forgiveness does not mean that this person is not going to suffer the consequences, because life makes sure, in whatever form, that they do suffer the consequences of the suffering that they inflict on other human beings. It's a karmic law. But if you don't want to be part of that anymore, if you want to step out of the karmic law, the first step out of and the most important step out of the karmic law is forgiveness. Then you do not feed it, you don't become part of it. That's why traditionally in spiritual teachings of various traditions, forgiveness is always emphasized. It must be real though. There are many forms of superficial forgiveness when just the mind is, okay, I forgive you. It's not deep, it's not real yet. The mind is trying to forgive, but you can only forgive if you realize that whatever actions have been perpetrated are the effects of human unconsciousness. In other words, what Jesus said on the cross, or is reported to have said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Very profound statement. It is a profound statement that can be applied to any act of violence perpetrated against other humans or life forms. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Not knowing what they do, of course, means they are unconscious. The word unconscious probably in that sense wasn't used at the time, so he said they don't know what they do. Karmic law still operates, but without you. And you can notice karmic law when you see a movie. Some movies like to manipulate your emotions. And so there are particular types of movies where they build up the tension by showing you some very evil person. And this evil person is killing all these people or hurting all these people. And then you're being manipulated to feel that incredible pull that this person should suffer for what he or she has done. That's the manipulation. And the audience loves that. They love watching things like that. So then the emotion builds up. And finally, there are even some movies like the movies that about vigilantes who take justice in their own hands because the justice system doesn't deal with the criminals anymore. So finally you have this guy who goes out and kills all the bad guys. And your emotions have been manipulated so much that the audience says, yes, yes, he must die. Not realize now what you are feeling, this incredible. It might also happen if you read about some dreadful crime that somebody has committed, and then if you read it on the internet, you can read on some news websites. You can read the comment section, and in the comment section, on every other comment says, "We should have the death penalty. He needs to say electric chair. He needs to be done to what he did. They should do to him," and all these. And this is an enormous pressure that people feel inside, and this is connected to karmic law, because there's a compensatory factor in karmic law, and you can feel that as the pressure inside you, but it keeps you trapped in karma. So in that sense, watching these movies is not helpful because it keeps you trapped in that wheel of karma. So they don't teach forgiveness there.
I love the lesson that he teaches in this video. It's not a very talked about video where he talks about dealing with unconsciousness. That is the title of the video. What I learned from whenever I listened to it, and I listened to it like 2 or 3 times before I really got the lesson, that when we say something should happen to somebody, right? We end up strengthening the other person's unconsciousness. Like if you resist the other person, like he says, right? What we resist persists, what we fight strengthens. We end up, like he gives the partner, the husband and the wife example, right? And he says, you're strengthening, you're pushing their buttons, right? And when you push, they also know how to push your buttons. And if you resist, then you're contributing to the same unconsciousness.
I love the
And then 1 minute, Parker. The other thing that I've, other than the fact that we are ourselves strengthening, he talks about that to step out of the karmic law, like we don't have, some people are so attached to their resentment, right? They want to hold on to the resentment and say, I'm never going to forgive this person. I'm going to remember this traumatic event. I'm going to remember whatever my relative did to me, right? Whatever transgression my relative did to me. But that holding of the resentment, we are contributing to the same violence. That's what I learned from this video, that in my holding of my resentment, and that's what freed me. Like I used to hold resentment about my mother being abusive, physically and verbally abusive. And I was like, I let go. I didn't have to. And in the letting go, that unconditional love rises. So many people say, I'm not going to forgive. They kind of feel that in having the non-forgiveness, that they're being kind, and they want to be peaceful and kind. The intention is peaceful and kind, but we cannot be peaceful and kind if you're holding the unforgiveness. That's one observation. And this all requires that transcendent dimension, right? It requires presence to be able to observe our own pattern of holding the resentment, right?
I love,
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
yes. I love what you're saying and what Eckhart is saying about forgiveness. And what I love also about what he was saying in this video is that it needs to be a true, authentic forgiveness of where you realize almost that there's nothing to forgive in absolute terms, but the true forgiveness of a situation, of just forgiving a situation or forgiving unconsciousness, where he said, Jesus said on the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do, and where he says in his book, no one can operate beyond their level of consciousness, and that I believe he said that karma is the manifestation of unconscious patterns. And so the only thing to do is to forgive, and to recognize factually that you've just had an awareness about a pattern, and forgiving it deeply, not conceptually, not giving lip service to it or because we think we should, but just being able to forgive the whole situation, because it cannot be other than how it is, and everybody's doing their best, and so are you, and so are we. So I like how you also described that it's sort of, with it being compensatory, is that things, karma is karma. It's like a cycle until it's not, and you can drop it at any time. And I wonder if you could speak to how karma has been superficially perceived in the world as being something that's comes back to us that we need to be afraid of. It's or directly related to what and it's also associated with bad karma, more so than you hear people say about good karma. What are some of the misunderstandings that we have?
I don't think there's bad or good karma. It is just as he's saying in this video, we have to realize that we are co-creating our future moment from what we did in this present moment. So if we were reactionary in this present moment, something arose. Somebody was at a McDonald's, this thing, right? And we were reactionary towards it. And my thing is the reactionary doesn't even have to be like anger, like hot anger or frustration. So there is, when we are in total presence, we are at this level of exuberant joy. Satchit Ananda, that's what Eckhart says, right? any drop in the vibrational frequency from that level of exuberance is reactionary, right? So one of the things I'll give an example of is I recently started a new job, right? I used to work from home 3 days a week. Now I shifted from working 3 days a week to 5 days of going into work, driving, right? So I'm in exuberant joy. Like when I do my meditation and throughout the day, I'm in that exuberant joy. But I saw a level drop when I started driving in the first week that I started driving, right? There was a level drop in that exuberance. And I was able to notice it because I know my 0 point. And that's why I call it my 0 point, right? That it's that exuberant joy. Why did that joy drop? And then I went, it's because I'm having to drive into work 5 days a week. That's my resistance. The drop is my resistance. So I fell back into, I'm grateful that I'm going against traffic, right? I'm not in rush hour traffic. It's in the opposite direction. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the fact that it's just 10 miles. So it takes me like 15 minutes. I shifted my, and then I said, okay, if it is that I don't want to drive in traffic, let me shift my hours. I'll start wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'll be at work by 7 a.m. So I am not in that rush hour traffic anymore, right? I get there in 15 minutes at 7 a.m. in the morning. So just that little shift. So we have to be that observant of what is reactivity in us. And we will not be that observant unless we are at that. That's why that meditation, the inner body meditation, breath work is so important to know our 0 point. Because any fall, the the term I like is Abraham Hicks calls it the high flying disc. We are in our meditation, we are on a high flying disc, right? So joyful. And then what changes throughout the day? Does it drop from that high flying disc? And what did cause it, right? For me, it was a change in schedule, just a change in schedule, that I had to now drive into work 5 days a week. And out of that grace, you won't believe it, Parker, I had to work Thursday all night. I mean, until 1 a.m. or something. They let me work from home the next day. So look at the grace. It's not that they're asking me to, the moment that resistance dropped, right? I went back to that exuberant joy about going into work. There was exuberant, the once I recognized that reactivity and corrected, went back to gratitude, right? Compassion. The moment there was gratitude and compassion, I went back into that high flying disc, and look what happens. Effortless grace. They say, oh, you can work from home tomorrow. You've already stayed up all night. That's okay. You can start your day late. I still started my day at 9 a.m. on Friday. But and then I was available for the group meditation, like peacefully, right? I was tired by the time group meditation started, but that's the level of observation of our own inner state that is required. That's what he's talking about, I think.
So is karma, would you say that karma starts at the level of impulse? Because the impulse behind all of our activity really determines that quality. Is that another way of saying that karma, that this is how karma materializes? And along the same lines, if I love your example of how you use the tools of compassion and gratitude to gently move into an impulse, an energetic impulse that was able to receive the surrender. So you allowed the surrender in and pulled these beautiful tools to make sure that the impulse was a full surrender. And So he also talks about, and I'm getting there with my question, he also talks about how you might be in the presence of unconsciousness and somebody throws something at you, or they're coming after you, and you might have to dodge in one direction. Is the activity of other people and what they're doing, is that our karma? Is it their karma, or is it our karma? How is that seen?
So
Is that clear?
that person, what I feel is, and in The Power of Now, or A New Earth, he says people who have a great shared past. I think in The Power of Now, he says people
Yes.
who we've shared past the most with, like mother, father, brother, siblings, right? Um, they know how to push our buttons the most, just like how he says in the video, right? Husband, like my ex-husband would know how to push my buttons, and I would know how to push his buttons. Uh, this reminds me, Eckhart said that he noticed the pattern, how his mom knew exactly what to say that would irritate his dad to turn him into explosive anger. And even as a child, he said like he would like cringe the moment she would start, that he knew what the trigger was, right? Like for his dad. So
Yeah.
it's something like that. Like people exactly know, if we have a shared past, they exactly know how to push our buttons. But it's back to, so how do I learn not to react to this person is pushing our buttons, right? Is that rest in our awareness. That's what he says in New Earth, let it pass through you. Let the let the action. So our responsibility, and responsibility, the word is ability to respond. Our responsibility in that situation is to let that go through. Like my son says, why are you listening to that Eckhart? You don't need to listen to somebody who's or charlatan or something, right? So let it pass through. I just smile at him, right? There's
So
nothing.
it's like, so what you're saying, it's sort of like it's like a karma dance, and all you have to do is not dance, really, to recognize. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, that just keeps happening, it's always going to be like this. What no resistance means, that you have no dialogue, that you're completely at peace with things, and you're able to let it pass right through you, right? It's just, as you were saying, it's like, so you kind of step out of the karma dance, and you're stepping out of the karmic wheel. Is that?
And so I'll take the same example, right? If I were to continue my resistance of not being on my high flying disc and having resisted, not change my work pattern, right? I'll continue to be irritated, and that, instead of just being a drop in energy, not being in an exuberant state, will turn into irritation, annoyance, and anger,
Yes.
right? Because you're superimposing the feeling over and over again. And that's the other part people don't understand, is the belief. So thought is electromagnetic energy, just like our vibrational state is energy, right? We are non-physical energy in our essence. Thought is also has an inner sound and inner electromagnetic energy to it.
Yes.
And thoughts that are negative, they have a way of attracting each other. Like once you spin into a negative aspect of it, I'll find so many more things about my job that are irritating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then that's the spin. That's the dog chewing, just like a dog chews a bone. We start chewing on how many more things I can be irritated
Yes.
about my job, right? So to get out of, to unlock that polarity, is to get into the compassionate, exactly what he says, have compassion for the unconsciousness of the other. We don't know their story. We don't know what my mother went through. We don't know what Eckhart's father went through to have that explosive anger, right? So they may have gone through all the more trauma than what we experience from them. So have compassion for it, and forgiveness. Forgiveness that
Yes.
my radiant essence was never touched. Yeah, my body had some beatings, or I was abused verbally, but that was psychological, but my radiant essence was never touched. And that is, then we get out of the karmic cycle, then we unlock from that person. And that's how you unlock from that person. If not, that continues, that action reaction keeps you locked with that person, with that human being.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then we don't create another future moment where the same thing, the same incidents can keep occurring. Like if you say so and so person is what does he use? A liar. If you say this person is a liar, continuously we meet people that are liars because we are holding the limiting belief, right? So the way to unlock from that is, yeah, people lie. I've lied when I was younger. I've said quite a bit of white lies to cover my brother or something like that. Didn't tell my mom what actually happened so that he wouldn't get beatings,
Yes.
right? So
Yes. So it's so beautiful to see that our exit point is always the present moment, and a deep acceptance of whatever reactivity may show up, so that we're able to sit in it long enough to know what needs to be liberated, right? What needs to be seen, not the story, because the story is another path to more of the same. And that in karmic law it's not a personal vendetta sheet. It's not out to get you. It's not an entity. It's a causal principle, wouldn't you say?
I would call it, it is the law of attraction. What people generally term the law of attraction is karmic law. It's universal, just like the law of gravity. But we have to realize that we are creating out of our vibrational state. We are co-creating the next moment, right?
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.